All right, so the hot topic, at least in my world, for the last almost 2 weeks has been around language and around illness, right? And so from probably doing this for almost 20 years, meaning like hands-on healing people, and also studying the mind for the last 30 years, I've seen some very interesting correlationships between our words that come out of our mouths and how sick people are, right? And essentially my theory in the future is the AI that will be listening to our language will be able to see how often we're saying words like should and our disease, illness, risk levels, right? And so you might be thinking, like, how is that possible? How can we get the language out of our mouth measured in terms of the words that we're saying and be able to predict illness? And I'll sort of explain to you this concept. Essentially, our health is dictated more than just our biology, right? More than just like what we're eating and our bacteria. Those are some of the things. However, at the highest level, we're just a bunch of particles that can also be waves, right? We're a bunch of vibrating particles. And so those vibrating particles are dictated by a lot of things. And one of them is our thoughts, right? And so follow the logic here, right? We're a bunch of vibrating molecules. One of the predominant variables that dictates the vibrational frequency of those molecules are our thoughts, like what we're thinking. And so there's this concept, before I get to how a word should gets into illness, you need to understand another concept, which is, and I talked about this in another video, which is called the gap. So imagine a circle within another circle. The inner circle is your essence. It's you exactly as you are right now. The outer circle is where your goals and where you feel like you want to get to, okay? And so in life, ideally, one other concept to comprehend and understand is nothing in the universe is linear, right? There's no linear things in the universe. Everything operates in a wave, right? Particle, static, or if you're going to be moving, it's a wave. And so we can see this concept in every day in our lives, right? Our hormones have a circadian rhythm, right? And sun goes up, sun comes down, right? Everything is in a pattern. And so in life, we get to pulse between the outer circle and the inner circle, right? In other words, there's moments in our lives where we embrace exactly everything as is, which is the inner circle. And there's moments in life where we embrace the outer circle, right? Which is our goals and our dreams and our aspirations, right? And it's meant to do this, right? Everything pulses, right? Because nothing is static. Here's what happens. Most people live in the outer circle, right? They constantly are thinking where they should be, right? Where they need to get to. And then actually don't spend a lot of time in the inner circle, which there is no need and no should. That language will never come out of our mouths, right? Or want, because they technically have everything. And so the gap, the distance, right, between the outer circle and the inner circle also factors into this, right? If you have too big of a gap, right? Imagine if your essence is here and the gap that you have, that your desire is this big, that very large gap produces a sensation of, oh my God, I may not be able to achieve that. Whereas the little gap, like if your essence is here and you just desire this, that's a very achievable gap, right? So follow me on this, right? And so you want to be mindful of the gap, right? Because if it's too big, right? If you're like, I know some people will say things like, I'm going to help the world. That's a pretty big gap, right? And so it's not distinct. And while they kind of feel good, there are times where they feel like they have an imposter syndrome. They feel like they're not achieving their thing. And it's because they set such a big gap that they always feel like they're not quite there yet, right? And the other thing is, if they live in that gap, their language, right? They never embrace the inner self, the essence. They live in that space. Their words are constantly, oh, I should be doing that. If someone says this, they're like, oh, I should be doing that. They watch a video, I should be doing that. And what ends up happening is the should represents a desire. That desired intention represents a frequency of not love, right? If you think about it, the vibrational frequency, the state to be in that's the most healing, in my perspective from looking at this, essentially is love. Right? Under that, it's like peace, right? It's like, it's like the 70s. They kind of had it figured out back in the 70s, like love and peace. And so those states represents the inner circle, right? And so we're essentially indirectly able to know what state people are in based on their language, right? Just based on their language. because it's a should. You would never say the word should if you were in the inner circle. Now, I want to make sure that I don't impart this concept that I'm saying it's bad to be in the outer circle. I think it is not serving of humans because it's very anti-God, anti-universe if you stay in either one of these circles all the time, right? Very important, right? Because we're meant to oscillate. And you'll hear language like we expand and then we contract. If you're constantly expanding, you have no solid essence in which, no density in which to create from, because you're constantly expanding, right? And this, I'm just using language in the personal health space, in personal self-development space, right? And so I believe in the future, as we explain and talk to people through conversing, the AI will listen to our language, and already, I guarantee you this is gonna happen. If someone doesn't invent this, I'll go and do it, which is, oh yeah, your disease risk, Bob, just increased by so-and-so because we found that you were saying should, want, need to this frequently. I guarantee you in the future, our language will be able to, well, basically the language will give AI the data, and the AI will decipher for us our disease and illness risk just based on our language, right? Because our language, right, keep in mind, and again, I've made videos about this, if you think about it, we don't piece letters together to form a word. We spell words, because words are like spells that incant vibrations into the universe. And some other data, you may have not seen my previous videos, like since 1984, we've known that our DNA makes light particles that shoots away into others and into the universe. We're constantly broadcasting and receiving all this data, right? Whether through waveforms, right? Imagine light particles can also be waves, right? So this wave contains a frequency. That frequency contains data. We're constantly broadcasting data, right, into the world. And so, hey, John, so are goals outer circles supposed to be super specific or general? Great question. So the question is, are goals in the outer circle supposed to be super specific or general? There's both, right? And so what I found from studying this is it is helpful to have very specific intentions, but you do want to leave room for magic, right? If you only are constantly super, right, the duality of being focused means you're not seeing the periphery. And being focused on the thing will get you the thing for sure, more likely, but it does not leave room for the periphery. And if you think about it, the things in our lives that actually bring us the most happiness and the most joy, if you think about it, it's actually, a lot of times it's not the focus thing, it's the periphery. It's the thing that we didn't even think about, and then we experienced it. Those are the light, the love, and the delight. It feels good, right? We can pat ourselves on the back and say, yes, we did it by focusing on that goal, but the true joy a lot of times is in the periphery. And so if you're gonna set goals, you can set clear intentions, but always, make enough room for magic to happen, right? The outer circle, right? And so that's my take on it from, looking at this for 30 years. And so I just wanted to make a video to kind of explain that. Tag, oh my God, I haven't talked to you in so long. We gotta connect. And thanks everyone for joining. So I feel like this is such an important concept. And from studying consciousness for so long, I talk to people all the time. There's like a handful of things. There's no like 50 things that you got to practice and learn. Ultimately, God, universe just has a handful of things, and everything else that we're studying and practicing tie back to a handful of frameworks. And I'm a huge fan of understanding the frameworks first, or else we feel like we're chasing a bunch of tips and tricks. Like we journal, we meditate, and then we do all the numerous self-help. I know some people's morning rituals like 2 hours long. It's awesome for them. I'm a huge fan of like, let's just go in flow, right? And so this is one of the fundamental things that I feel like applies to a lot of things. The framework I've thought about for a long time, and it's a framework that we really try to impart on our clients that come into the healing houses. And so, hope you found this helpful. You're welcome, John. And so, what I just said in this video, actually, it's a pretty deep thing. If this, sometimes when I talk to humans, when I talk about this stuff, I can tell like their eyes glaze over. They're not sleepy or lazy. What I found is that when the words are at a certain, if I'm speaking in FM and you're used to listening in AM, the brain doesn't register. And that's okay. I'm not saying there's a level thing or not, but if this didn't sink in, comment. I can explain this in other vibrational words and techniques. I'm just, because we're not speaking 101, so I'm just kind of generally broadcasting, right? And so if what I just said makes no sense whatsoever, or you don't feel it. If you just intellectually understand it without feeling it here, I would love for you to comment. I can for sure relay this in a different way, using different words and different vibrations that actually get to hear. What I found again in learning some of this stuff, if it's not embodied here, if it's just here, it has a very different effect on our lives. So have an amazing day. Just wanted to sort of put that out there, and I will make some future videos later.